Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update for the 18th of August 2023. My last one, my last day in exile today. So I'll be back to normal tomorrow and going forward. Although tomorrow might be a bit funky because we get back in the middle of the night, etc., etc. Anyway, just to give you an idea of the timing of videos, might be a bit funky for the next 24 hours or so. Right. Let's go to where we normally start. The Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. 460 KIA. That's lower than it has been previously. It's around about where it was yesterday. 3 tanks and 12 APVs. 3 tanks is a lower number than we've seen. 12 APVs is going to hurt the Russians for sure. 24 artillery systems is certainly going to be of significance to them. We've seen this hugely consistent degradation of their artillery systems. They are complaining all the time of a lack of counter battery fire, and this is why. 2 helicopters taken down. I reported them yesterday. Now there's lots of footage of that coming out. So they've lost 2 helicopters, and they also seem to be losing the crew with them. Now, there was a report that one of the helicopters shot down near Robotna. I think it was one near Robotna. The navigator died, but the pilot was able to eject. However, I've seen subsequent footage to suggest that the pilot might very well be deceased, unless that was the navigator. But I don't think so. I think there was one parachute that came out, and I'm pretty sure that that person is, unfortunately for him, no longer a person. UAVs, drones, 4 taken out. That won't be from last night, it'll be from the night before. 17 vehicles and fuel tanks and 10 pieces of special equipment. 10 pieces of special equipment is very high. That's possibly the highest or the equal highest, or the highest I've seen might be 11 or something. So that is a really big number of probably things like electronic warfare, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. I have seen an excavator taken out yesterday, so there'll be one of those thrown in there probably. So that's the general staff figures. We seem to have a fairly consistent degradation across all the categories. In fact, I will endeavour to, in about 2 days' time, I'll probably go through Dell's spreadsheet again as he tots all these up on a daily basis to see if there's anything we can glean from trends and from the stats. So Andrew Perpetua, who's a mapper I rely on, he does a lot of surveying of video footage, of imagery, and he tots up what he finds on a daily basis. Yesterday, there was a few more Ukrainians and Russians, and I was talking about how that probably signifies the Ukrainians are on the attack. Today, we are seeing a parity pretty much there, which again would suggest that Ukrainians are attacking a lot. There is, quite a high number of IFVs and MRAPs, which you will see when they do these thrusts that are predominantly infantry led, and so therefore they use IFVs and MRAPs to hold the infantry in, and they get them to a position, and then they offload. There are fewer tank engagements, certainly at the moment, as I think these attacks are more probing. The Russians have lost a real, cross section of stuff here. So helicopter actually is 2 helicopters now, air defense, engineering vehicles, 2 of them, artillery, boat as well. So there is some footage of a boat getting taken out by a K drone. Tanks, IFVs, APCs, and so on and so forth. For the Ukrainians, it's mainly IFVs and MRAPs. There's a boat thrown in there as well. And that, as I say, that talks about the offensive nature of their maneuvers. Right, the helicopters that were taken out yesterday, I think, were both Ka-52 helicopters, one in Bakhmut area, one in Robotna. Now, Yakub Yanovsky, who is part of the Oryx team, says that a third of the Russian Ka-52 fleet has been taken out. There was some Russian troll challenged me yesterday in one of the threads, or said some kind of nonsense statement. But it is very obvious that the Russians are in trouble in terms of their helicopter fleet. And I was pointing out to him that, when you've got visual confirmation of at least a third of the Russian Ka-52 fleet taken down, bear in mind that's going to be your benchmark minimum. There'll be more than that there isn't footage of. And you add to that the number of crew who have been lost in those losses. I mean, this is not including all the Mi-24s and Mi-8s and everything that have been lost as well. The Russians are suffering significantly in their sort of in their air force, in their helicopter provision there. And this is the moment it was hit, the K-52, and it took a dive, and that was the end of that. So the helicopter went down. There's lots of footage coming out about the helicopter. It was then caught burning on the ground in Robotno, according to the helicopter pilot, a channel affiliated with the Russian Army Aviation. The pilot managed to eject to save himself, but the navigator perished. As I've said, I have seen footage of a pilot. I don't know whether it's from this one or the one in Bakhmut, that where the pilot was definitely not alive. An alleged shot down with a guided Swedish manpads RBS-70, which has a range of up to 7 kilometers. I think that's significant that it is shot down with manpads that has a range of 7 kilometers there. So just in case. So he's obviously pretty happy for that. This is their raison d'etre, and it's going to be rare opportunity when you get to fire at a high value target like this. And when you do, and you get it, that is, yeah, evidently happy there. But 7 kilometers is more than, say, the Stingers that fire at sort of 5 kilometers. So I wonder whether this gives users of the RBS-70 a little bit of an advantage, that maybe the Russians, they stay away from the 5 kilometer range, but maybe another 2 kilometers they're not sort of looking out for, and they can be caught off guard, perhaps. I don't know. Right. Staying on aircraft here, this is a Ukrainian Su-24M. Now, these are the ones that fire the Storm Shadows. This is, I think, as a result of the strike on the Staro-Konstantinov Air Base in Khmelnytsky that took place on May the 6th. So that was, okay, that's quite some time ago. But, you know, you wonder whether there are casualties in terms of airframes in these sort of attacks. We know now that the Ukrainians are very good, or supposedly they talk a lot about moving their aircraft around, getting them in the air when they hear of the air raids taking place. Here we have one that has been lost. Maybe that was before they were, you know, doing all of these tactics to ensure the safety of their airframes. But certainly, at least one Su-24 has been lost in one of those raids. Okay, Russian Ministry of Defense claims last evening that Ukraine tried to attack Russian patrol ships Pytlivi and Vasily Baikov in the Black Sea. That's the second time I think that one's been attacked by naval drones. So attacked in the Black Sea with naval drones. They claim it was destroyed by onboard armaments, or a naval drone there. Now, there's lots of reporting coming out about this now, and people just saying, yeah, we don't know anything about it really until the dust settles, or until the water spray settles, and then we'll have some more certainty on it. There's been no official statements from the Ukrainians yet, or footage coming out. So whether anything was hit or whether it wasn't hit, we don't know. We know that the Ukrainians have plans for the Black Sea. Things are afoot, at least that's what they claim. It could be psyops, but they are apparently, well, they appear to be in ownership of much more able drones at the moment. They're playing around with the configuration of their drones, and yeah, at the expense of, I guess, Russian pieces of kit. Well, that's the intention. So I think the next 2-3 weeks, a month on the Black Sea will be an interesting month. Yes, contrary to okay, so this is going back to sort of losses of troops and whatnot. Here's a little sidebar on Ukrainian losses in terms of medics. So, contrary to many people's beliefs, medics are a target at this war. We know this from Russia's previous engagements in Syria and places. I keep hearing things like, we are a 9 medics team, and now only 2 of us are still alive. Our ambulance got hit by a drone, only 1 man survived. The entire medical team was killed, and we can't even collect bodies. So this is a reaction from someone who obviously knows medical. So Ukrainian volunteer pushing medical supplies to those who need them most. So that's Anna Filipova. This is in response to the Kyiv Independent says Russian forces have consistently targeted medics and vehicles evacuating the wounded throughout the full-scale war. Medics are instructed to prioritize their safety over the wounded, but often risk their own lives attempting to save others. Yeah, it's pretty sad. And you get all these sort of anecdotes. My friend's husband was a medic, only deployed a couple of months ago, but was killed somewhere on the front line just a few days ago. He leaves behind a wife and young daughter, and all that kind of stuff. It is not surprising. We have seen this. I mean, the Russians have got form for doing an awful lot of pretty horrible stuff, like double tapping in Syria when the white helmets, but the very famous people who emergency services, effectively kind of volunteer emergency services, who would be clearing people out of rubble, doing amazing work, and they'd double tap these targets so that the white helmets would get taken out, and that's kind of what the Russians do, right? Um, okay, Lost in Lies, talking about, you know, I get challenged daily, pretty much, on why don't you produce the Ukrainian figures? You're so biased. You're such a Nazi. All this kind of absolute rubbish. Uh, I produce the Ukrainian ones because I think they're pretty well defended, and then I spend the next like 10 minutes after that giving you information as to why I think those figures are somewhat accurate, right? And I've been doing that for months and months and months, and I've built up a picture of why the general staff figures are at least fairly accurate. I don't talk about these top line figures. I talk about trends, and then in specific cases like helicopters, where these are rarer occurrences, you can go into the actual details of those, right? And I think these are pretty accurate. So that's that. When it comes to there are no figures for the Ukrainians because the Ukrainians don't count up their own figures, or at least they don't release them, right? For propaganda reasons, for psyops reasons, etc., etc. Right. However, TASS and the Russian MOD do release Ukrainian figures, but they are so stupidly unrealistic that I don't bother telling you them. Like the loss of airframes. I mean, this was months ago. Was something like 450, and they only started the Ukrainians only started the war with 236 or something. So it is physically the numbers Russia gives are physically impossible. So don't give me this whole nonsense about, oh, you don't produce Ukrainian figures. Yeah, that's because I can't, because there are no sensible figures, and the only ones produced are the Russian ones, and they lie through their teeth. Right. And so it's always interesting when Oryx produces a nice little list. There's two lists we're going to talk about today. First one is Lost in Lies. I've talked about this before, but I haven't dipped into it for a long time. And this is where they keep track of Russian propaganda claims about lost equipment, and they do this pretty well. So things like 48 HIMARS have been claimed to be destroyed, which is more than they have. 5 Harpoon launchers are claimed to be destroyed. 12 Caesars, 87 Crabs, 10 Panzerhauser 2000s, 260 M777s. This is famously an over-egged number that the Russians give. 1,000 TB2 drones, just absolutely ridiculous. 459 aircraft. That's not helicopters. That's fixed-wing aircraft. So the Russians claim to have destroyed, and that's the 16th of August, 2 days ago, 459 aircraft. They don't have that many aircraft by half. Like, it's just ridiculous. Helicopters 246, again, utter nonsense. And then lots of other sort of individual claims and stuff. Just that's why I don't give you the Russian official figures, because they are in philosophy it's called inductive reasoning. Don't cry wolf. Lie, don't believe you. So then if you're going to try and tell the truth at any point, I'm not going to believe you, but I'm justified in not believing you. I'm justified in not believing your claims because the last 50 times you made a claim, you wouldn't bet on a horse to win a race that just lost 50 times in a row, has absolutely no form, and doesn't look like it's going to win again in the next race. You wouldn't put all your money on that. So I'm not putting my money on Russian claims being true. That's my point. Get over it, trolls. Right. This is a bit of an evolution in drone usage here. So we have first-person view drones now being used to dive bomb. And what they do, as you can see here, is they find a target. They don't drop a bomb from above and they don't fly into it and destroy themselves. They don't sort of drop it just, you know, um, in those kind of IEDs dropped on a tank thing. They do things like dive bombing now, and then get out of there, so you're not losing the drone. And this appears to be proving quite successful. I presume you've got to get quite a bit of skill in doing so. And on that video, and I'll link all these videos below, you can see them actually do some proper dive bombing with drones, which is something to see. On the 17th of August, a fire broke out at the construction site of an ice arena in the city of Yekaterinburg. Since the beginning of the full-scale war against Ukraine, the number of fire incidents has increased across Russian territory, says the Euromaidan press. I shared with you an analysis of the increase in fires, the increase in intensity, power, and the types of places that these fires are taking place at over the last year and a half. It is really significant, and we see fires on a daily basis that you just wouldn't have seen a couple of years ago. Yes, the Russians aren't known for their health and safety, but also you just didn't see fires like this previously. Right, moving on to strikes. I mean, the usual things like Berdyansk hit, other places behind the lines hit, of course. JDAM's being used, like I keep saying, more frequently by the Ukrainians. They really are stepping up their use of JDAMs. This is a strike in the northern part of Solidar in north of Bakhmut, and that is something that we are seeing more and more. Now, the big story from last night, I guess, I don't think it's huge in terms of damage done, but Moscow was hit by another Ukrainian drone, probably one of these Beaver drones. No victims, and it was apparently destroyed. But that's what the Russians have said. However, there were ambulances and whatnot and emergency vehicles all about. There's quite a bit of footage of it, usually from a distance. So if we look at that, smoke rising there. And I don't know, yeah, there you see a light, a bit of a light and an explosion. And quite a loud bang. I probably haven't turned the sound up enough for you there, but let's see that again, slightly larger. So this is in Moscow, pretty much the center. Lights going off there. So a fairly significant bang going on, and it appears to be the Expo Center building in the center of Moscow that has been hit, as you can see there. Quite a bit of damage. I don't know whether that was the intended target or whether that was indeed hit by air defense systems or jammed or something so that it hit somewhere a bit random. I have no idea. But what the Ukrainians will be hoping by this is to give the Russian Muscovites something to think about, get them to these are intended to have a psychological effect. I guess not in the terms of, say, the Blitz in London that was proper destroying parts of London, but keeping them on edge, not liking the fact that they're at war, and then getting them to put pressure on, or at least change their sentiments with regard to support for the war, etc., etc. Okay, let's now go to other bits and pieces. Now, if you remember the other day, Shoigu, the defense minister, was saying in a speech that Russian equipment was better than Western equipment, etc., etc. And there was kind of like, really? And basically every claim he made was really dubious, to say the least. Chris O'Wiki's done a thread saying an apparently leaked memo attributed to former Russian Minister Dmitry Rogozin reports major shortcomings in the Russian army's equipment, including artillery far inferior to Western equivalents, a shortage of 152mm shells, inadequate communications, and obsolete drones. And there you get a picture of someone dressed up entirely in either very expensive Russian stuff or better Western equipment. So the Russian Telegram channel Chris O'Wiki dips into a lot, has published 4 pages of a memo signed by in Rogozin's name and addressed to Anton Vino. the head of the Russian presidential administration. It tackles problematic issues of organization and management of combat operations in the war in Ukraine. Rogozin served as deputy prime minister in charge of the defense industry from 2011 to 18, then as head of the Russian Space Agency until being fired in July 2022. He's since been trying to make himself relevant again, which is likely the context of the memo. He declared himself the head of the Tsar Wolves inspection group of volunteers with the stated aim of testing and supplying weapons for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Assuming the memo is genuine, it likely reflects the discussions with those involved in procurement. He writes that he has been in consultations with a number of military commanders in the zone of the special military operation, general designers of weapons and military equipment, as well as on the basis of the experience I've acquired over the past 9 months. These discussions have led him to identify 4 key issues on the solution of which the success of the special military operation largely depends. So he's saying this is important enough that the war outcome depends on it. First category is organization conduct of counter-battery warfare, in which he says the Russian counter-battery radars cannot detect long-range Western-supplied artillery, and Russian artillery batteries don't have the range to fire back. Specifically, A, obsolete artillery reconnaissance means the Zoopark radar, ACP and AZK, in terms of range, do not correspond to the technical characteristics of the enemy's systems, M777, Paladin, Crab, and all the more so MLRS and Mars. So those are like your HIMARS, Mars your tracked version of the HIMARS. B, the absence of counter-battery firepower from the combined barrel artillery of the firing range of Western artillery systems, the use of only long-range 152 mil shells, of which there is an acute shortage. Often the use of BM-21 and Uragan missiles, so those are your multiple launch rocket systems that fire off huge volleys of these, but they're not very accurate. He says the accuracy of which is negligible. Consideration is currently being given to the establishment of separate teams in each regiment using DJI Matrix 300's quadcopters. Here, there is apparently a missing page there. On the next extant page, the author discusses problems with radio communication systems. It's annoying because I'd love to know about what was on that drone page. Discusses problems with radio comm systems, focusing on new but problematic AZART system that the Russian military introduced in the 2010s, and the lack of the other modern communications equipment. He writes that there is a lack of stability, secrecy, and promptness to transfer of official information, and under certain conditions, a complete loss of communication. Specifically, he notes of the AZART, A, the technical specifications do not correspond to the declared data. There is no base radio station. Retransmission is possible only through the same radio station arranged as a repeater. So in a brigade regiment, to create the smallest system of communication in defense, you need to put at least 20 radios as repeaters. Communication in the PPCH mode, frequency hopping spread spectrum, with armored vehicles is impossible due to the absence of this mode on standard weapons stations. So this is something Trent Telenko's talked a lot about, that comms in the Russian army is problematic. He goes on, tanks, self-propelled artillery and armored vehicles are equipped with comms equipment of the last generation, operating in the open mode and exposed to the effects of electronic warfare. In order to organize stable communication, additional vehicle radios of the Hitera, Motorola Combat, Kirasan types are installed, which only partially solve the problem of command and control. C, the arrival of diverse means of radio communication for the troops has led to resorting and lack of compatibility. It is impossible to organize interaction in combat, both in the connection unit and with neighbors. Even though the AZART radios are inadequate, the troops do not have enough of them. D, space satellite communication facilities are necessary up to and including battalion level, as well as in reconnaissance, artillery, and air defense units. E, the supply of Arrakis 2, Argon, and Granite communications equipment, which have already proved to be highly effective, is carried out in minimal quantities. There are no company or battalion sets of radios in this infantry, especially for armored vehicles. These types of radios are more often mostly used by special ops and reconnaissance units. In the next section, the author discusses reconnaissance organization issues, by which he means aerial reconnaissance using drones. He highlights critical problems with the capabilities and quantities of Russia's drones. So I think this is just worth dipping into. I know this is a long one. So anyway, at a tactical and operational level, the main means of obtaining firing coordinates of troops and enemy facilities at a depth of 3 to 60 kilometers are drones of various types. B, the types of drones adopted into service before the beginning of the war are outdated and ineffective, and their video and photo equipment does not provide the required resolution and image clarity. These are the types such as All-Antenn, Granite, Tachyon, and Aileron. These drones are not immune from enemy electronic warfare, and because of this, there are large losses in the course of their use. The previously used devices of the Cometa type have not been finalized. The new models, more spamming proof and with better optical equipment, such as a Zala SuperCam, the cost of one device is about 25 million rubles or $264,000, and others cannot yet cover the need of the troops during the course of the war. Among other things, the issue of training specialists for these types of drones has not been fully resolved. While we are still getting ready for the use of the SuperCam in the zone of the war, in cooperation with the manufacturer's representatives, the Zala requires a trip to the territory of the Russian Federation for a period of up to 3 weeks. In regular drone units, 10 to 30% of the total number of aircraft are available, taking into account combat losses. Every aircraft is accounted for. Despite improvements in the quality of drone optics and technical parameters of the complexes, the issues of countering the enemy's electronic defense systems has not been resolved. There's no proper feedback from the Russian MOD to industry and leading state design bureaus. Nevertheless, the issues of organizing direct dialogue between the troops and industry, including private engineering companies, are solvable and require only will and organization of efforts. Okay, that's the end of that long thread, but it just gives you an indication from someone within, with knowledge that is working on these kind of things. Yes, he might have an agenda, but it appears that this is something we've heard in a number of places, particularly counter-battery issues that the Russians have. So that kind of fleshes out some of those claims and adds a few more things to consider as well. Right, I'm going to big up Twitter here. One of Twitter's good characteristics, or one of the good I can't think of the words. The things that they've coded into Twitter is the ability for community context notes at the bottom of claims that act as a corrective to disinformation claims. Now, I meant to show you this yesterday. I don't know why I didn't. This is Mariupol before and after. So this is a video from the Russians, and this annoys the bejesus out of me. So this video has come out saying, look at what was happening. Look at it now, before and after. And this is the Russian mission COE saying, Mariupol before and after. See for yourself. Think for yourself. And as mentioned in the reader's context notes, the added context here is that the before part of this image was taken after Russian forces surrounded and bombed Mariupol. The city was largely untouched by war prior to Russian invasion. The image is also selective. Large areas of the city remain in ruins, and then gives a load or a few URLs, a few links to justify those conclusions. Right. This video from the Russians here is basically like me going up to Harry on the street and hitting him around the face 47 times with a plank, right? And then paying for him to get corrective surgery, where I piece his face back together, and I take a picture of his pieced back together face, and then throw it on the internet. Say, look how wonderful I am. Look at what an amazing job I've done of replacing Harry's face. And you're like, hang on, didn't you smack him around the face 47 times with a plank? Yeah, but look at his face now. It looks really new. You're like, you are still a horrible person, JP. You still have hit someone 47 times around the face with a plank. You evil, evil person. So this is utter lunacy. I keep saying, if you're defending this, are you sure you're on the right side? Right. Okay. The Washington Post has come out with an exclusive piece today saying US intelligence says that Ukraine's counteroffensive will fail to reach the key city of Melitopol. So this is going to please the Russians no end, and those Russian trolls in my threads. People familiar with classified forecasts told the Post, which would mean Kiev won't fulfill its objective of severing Russia's land bridge. Now, this may or may not be the case. There may be US intelligence thinking this. They may have done analysis that shows that they are going to struggle to get to Melitopol. Or, the flip side is that, do you know what? The US intelligence also thought that the Ukrainians were going to be wiped out within 3 days. And that never happened. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? US intelligence has been correct. UK and US intelligence were famously correct in predicting the war, whereas other intelligence networks didn't. But this is certainly a negative outlook. They have maybe struggled more than they they were expected to. On the other hand, I do think the Russians are exhausting themselves. I don't think they have that much in the locker, and at some point there is going to be, I think, the potential for the dam to break, and that would change this kind of analysis quite a lot. But be interesting. I might have to read the whole article. I just haven't had time to yet. Only sort of came out in the last 10 hours while I was asleep. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what you guys think about that. Okay, this and talking about dam breaking. This might be quite a revealing bit of footage, and this is exactly what I thought. And now other people are saying this as well. So I'm glad that sometimes my conclusions aren't just, you get the imposter syndrome, don't you? So check this out. This is basically just a tank driving across a field, right? Okay, it's a PT Twardy, so it's an upgraded, a Polish tank, upgraded T-72, and it's driving through a field and it's being attacked with artillery, and it's doing a pretty good job and drives for quite a long time. Uh, you can see, I think it looks like artillery landing in certain places, and there you go, sort of driving towards target, and driving all over the shop, actually. Now, uh, what do you think about that? What does that tell you? Because what that tells me is this tank is freely able to move in an area you would expect thousands of mines to be, right? Which is to say that not everywhere is completely and utterly mined. I don't think this has been mine cleared, right? So I think this is a case of breaking through layers of minefields to then find areas behind. Of course, the Russians aren't really going to want to mine everywhere, absolutely everywhere, where they are going to be operating as well. So behind the front lines, if they mine everywhere, then they can't move themselves, right? So this is fearless Ukrainian soldiers continue shooting Russian positions, blah 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 blah. Recorded near Urizhany a few days ago. And Thomas Tyner says, and no minefield. Seems the Ukrainian troops are past the massive Russian mine barriers. Lots of people commenting on this. They would have needed billions of mines to mine the entire area. Looks like we now know how deep the minefield is. Exactly my thoughts. They're a lot harder to hit when they're able to zigzag about at speed. Very smart artillery probing strategy should help speed things up, you would think. So on and so forth. And, you know, if they don't have enough anti-tank weaponry, I mean, they do have some. Obviously, we've seen a whole number of Ukrainian tanks get taken out, and Bradleys and whatnot. But you start to feel a little bit more positive when you can see movement like that. Now, how representative is that? Will we see that over the next week after breaking through those first lines of defense? I don't know. Or will the Russians have mined everywhere? I don't know. But if you're thinking about breaking through past the first line of defense in Velika Novosilka sector and getting towards Mariupol, then you could think maybe it might be plain sailing down to Mariupol. Yeah, it might have some difficult terrain, but actually it's not going to be hugely mined because they just don't have billions of mines, right? That's an awful lot of land. So anyway, I just thought it was an interesting bit of footage. Deputy head of Ukraine's state tax service has survived an apparent assassination attempt. Chief of the Finance and Tax Committee, Danilo Hetmantsev, says the attempt on Yevhen Sukur's life happened yesterday in central Kyiv, but police did not reveal details until today. This is significant because I think I worry about someone like Zelensky. He's around so many people all the time, and of course, he's going to have a really good security unit around him. But he does visit a lot of places in Ukraine, and all it takes is one person with pro-Russian tendencies to be nearby with the ability to do something. And yeah, Zelensky, his life is in danger. So I'm surprised we haven't seen more of this activity, to be honest. But anyway, I thought that was worthy of note. Right. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to get on to doing the second piece. Sweet. Speak soon. Toodle pips.